Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday. It is August 8th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and another really strong rally day. I mean, this is about as easy a day as it gets. Literally from about 8:45 or so here until noontime, we really didn't even have a correction. It's just straight up, and this is a very strong trend. When you start to see lots of little bars with stems on both sides, and the corrections are very shallow, and it just keeps going higher. That's a strong trend, and generally you're not going to get a lot of opportunity to enter that thing, um, like usual. So any pull back to the key entry point, you just about have to enter it. Waiting on second entries and so forth, you probably won't get them very rarely. So if it pulls back to the key entry point and gives you a relatively decent setup, you almost have to take it. Um, just be careful if you get an overshoot or something like that um, when you come back to the key entry point, because that might, a lot of times when you get that overshoot, it won't be long. You'll probably have a break, and that's where you got to be a little careful. That's one of the instances right in here. I think there's a second entry in this right here. I believe this is where it is. I'll have to dig in a little bit when we get a little closer. So that's one you got to be careful on. Oops, didn't mean to do that. But otherwise, I mean, it's just straight up. We started out a little flat in this tight range. We dropped out, had a little failure, and then it was off to the races. And we didn't really have a correction until around noontime or so. And then when we got back to the key entry point, off we go higher again. And we actually had a break here, a close outside, and even a close outside here. But you can see finally after a close outside and a couple legs up, we're selling off in the after hours. So this has been a pretty strong move down here after hours. But during regular hours, it was all uphill. So um, I'm going to back out. We'll talk about the trades. This will wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Friday, so this will finish out our week. We will be back Monday. So back out where you can see something here. Actually, early on, you can see we were coming up here. This was right at the 7 o'clock hour, and we had a little break lower at turn and went out the other side with plenty of room back to the EMA. So you may take that trade. I marked it green. This was the better. Wait on the higher low when it broke through the EMA and pulled back, and that's a nice bullish bar. And there's actually a failure right there. I didn't mark that one because it's right into all that resistance across there. But that's a possibility. Um, I mean, it's very rarely those fail, especially on a bar that opened on its low and closed on its high. A lot of times you don't get a chance to enter those because they just open. The next bar opens on its low and it takes off again. But this one did back up and fill the gap. It's between the two bars. They actually overlap, so you could have gotten in that one. And then we just started going sideways here right into the open. And you had to be careful about going short too early here. This one's a possibility. You made a high. I mean, you made the high here, and then you test it, and then really a double test, or you could even count that as a test, and then you kind of tested it 2 or 3 times here, and you got a little small bearish bar. It's starting to look like a range now, so you may take that one, but you got to be careful about getting short here because the trend had been up. But once it was obvious it was a range, you could play this by range rules. This is the kind of bar you want to get in on. Very bearish, right near the high, going short, or right near the low, going long. You only got one good chance to go long right here. This one you didn't have enough room really. And then it's too tight right here. And of course, this one you don't have enough room to get out either. That would have been a nice trade because the bottom did drop out of it. But the better trade is to try to catch it back to, to the long side. And what happens, you get that failed breakout, and that leads to the rally. And a lot of times, I talk about this all the time, these failed breakouts can be key points to catch a major low or a major high. And in this case, it broke to the low side. And talk about a major low. I mean, it was straight up after that. And you would have caught a runner right here as well. So you catch a runner on this one trade, and, theoretically, you could ride this all the way. So Even if you just rode it till you got a break of the trend of this is a spike in channel is what this is, and you know, once you got an overshoot here, that probably would have been a good place to exit. Um, so, but even if you waited till here, it's still a really nice move from here all the way to here. So, um, great opportunity these are, and they're a little bit risky, so it's marked green, but notice you don't get a higher low till way up here, and you don't want to be going long way up here that far away from the EMA. It still would have worked, but it's a little bit risky. Actually, you get a little resistance right there, and you get a little breakout. Oops. And you can see that right there. It's a little breakout pullback um, long, but you actually you push up and you come back and you bounce right off the trend line and the support resistance line. It's a nice bullish bar. So I like that one. And technically you could count that as a new low because you got a little matching lows right there. So that's, you can count that as a new low, and then it drops below that. So first entry, failed second entry short. You're pushing it on that one, but it's still there. And then you drop up and you try to go lower twice, and again it bounces right off that trend line. Bullish bar. I like going long there again. And it's obvious we got a real strong spiking channel going on here now. You get another pullback right here to the key entry point. It's not a perfect bar, but that may be all you get. You may want to take that one. And of course, that leads to the overshoot. And then you're coming down, and that is just the first entry right there. This was the second entry down here. And because of that overshoot, I'd be a little bit leery about entering right there, although, I mean, if you draw your trend line, I don't have it on there, but you can see that trend line. It's a little bit risky going long right there, but if you risk it, you got burned on that one. But if you waited on the second entry, off it goes again. Then you get and if you didn't like entering here, you get another second entry here. And off, and every one of these catch runners, just about every one of them, this one may not have here. Then you come back here, and you bounce again with a nice little bullish bar. I don't like that one because you're going long right into kind of a double top. But then you get the failed second entry short right there, and look at all the confluence right there. All these converging midline, EMA, trend line. This looks like another spike in channel, kind of a repeat pattern. And you can see that flatter line I drew across there. So there's multiple lines running across this thing, and they all converge right there. So it's great confluence. So I like going long on that one. And then you don't get another second entry till right here. You actually got a new swing low because it's lower than that one. So first entry, second entry, you got a failed second entry short, and look how bearish that is, and it breaks below it and fails and turns back up. It took it a minute to take on off, but it did. There's a little bit of congestion right there, so I gave that one a green one, but technically you could have taken that trade. And then it was a little iffy up here. You know, it's off of that trend line on that spiking channel. We've got to close outside now, and you've pushed a couple of legs up, and you can see it's not long till it's selling off. And there's a good chance we may come all the way back to the original trend line now. So there again, here's another one that's a possibility. Notice that new low, then a first entry, it pushes through the EMA, a failed second entry short. The only problem is it's right into the midline. There's a couple of different things going on there, but it's still one that you could argue for. And there's others in here you could probably argue for, just like I've said the last couple of days. I'm only marking the real obvious best trades because there's so many of them. But of course we come back here and we bounce, and you confirm this trend line. Relatively bullish bar right off a trend line. Notice how you made a higher high there, and now you're making a higher low, so you're probably going to get another leg up, at least back to here. And this thing has been very bullish, so it may be worth risking it right there. I did mark it green. You get a failed second entry short here, but it's right into that trend line, and I felt that was too risky. It would have worked but I just felt it was too risky. And then of course it gets a close outside this trend line right here. I may need to adjust that a little bit. Should be just a tad higher right there. That will of course necessitate correcting that one as well. But anyway, it pushes on through, pulls back, and where does it bounce? Right off the original main trend line. Nice bullish bar, a little bit away from the EMA. You're probably going to at least come back to that. I like going long there. And this thing, again, you would have, if you could have got in that one. See how that one gaps over? There's no overlap between those two bars. It closed on its high. This one opened on its low and just kept going. There's a good chance you may not have gotten in that trade. So, but off it goes. And that took you into the 2 o'clock hour. So really till this correction right here, and I don't really like taking any shorts in here. I don't see any shorts that I really like. I still like the longs here because this is more, notice how we're back and forth above and below the EMA, and the overall bias has been extremely strong. So not to say that you probably couldn't have taken some of these and they would have worked. I just don't like going short on a day like this. It's too risky. And there it is, the bigger picture again. It's just all uphill. So really good trading day, a really good trading week. There's not much else you can say about today except really up until right here, it was not a real strong trend. This is a kind of a choppy, one of those where you're going sideways and you jump up and you go sideways, and then a lot of times you jump up and go sideways. But once we had this failed break lower right here, around 8:45 or so. I mean, I love trying to get into those. You hear me say this all the time on these failed breaks lower. If you catch the right one, they turn out to be major lows, and if they fell out the high, sometimes they turn out to be major highs. And when they do, like today, I mean, you know, that if you catch that one trade with even one runner, you can make a week's worth of trades right up through there. Easy. Easy. So, but you got to have to take a little risk. So it is green. Notice that. And there's a reason it's green, because it's a little bit risky. Usually you want to wait on that. You want to wait on that high or low, but you don't get one till way up here, and you miss that trade. And you don't probably catch a runner up here because it comes back. There's other opportunities up here to catch a runner, but you don't catch one like this where you can ride it all the way. It just doesn't happen. So even this one, you had a nice run, but you didn't get a long-term runner because that's what this was doing. It was coming back to test that breakout area. There's a little bit of congestion there, and there's a little bit of resistance across there, and that's what this is doing. It's coming back to test that, and once it gets that good test and it bounces, it's off to the races. And just remember that prices will continually, like right here, we never came back and tested this. Notice how it pushed through and it just couldn't, it just kept going. At some point we may come back, we may even do it in the overnight, but it's testing a bunch of these areas already on the way down here, and it may come all the way down and retest that, because it's very rare that it doesn't come back and test a place that it breaks out. Just like you know, if it breaks out the lows here, it'll come back and test this low. This time it came back and it just kept going. But study your charts on these failed breaks on out of these tight ranges and out of ranges and so forth, because you'll hear me say it a lot. These can be important lows and highs for the day, and if you catch the right one, it's off to the races. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. There's not much else we can say about today. This is one of those days where it's one of those real strong trends. And if you want to enter in here, if it comes back to the key entry point and you got a good signal bar, you just about have to enter. The only thing I'd be leery of is if you get a little overshoot like here, or if you can't, like right in here, you get a break and then you can't get back up to the other side, you know, then you got to be careful, because you're probably way overdue for a correction. And that's not much, even though it's a fairly decent correction, that's not much of a correction considering how much we moved today. I mean, we're already back above 2,900. We're 2,940. We're almost halfway to back to 3,000 again in just a day or two. So, I mean, every time we have one of those strong sell-offs, and people are calling for the end, you just rally stronger. And eventually one day it won't, but it's been a long time. I haven't never seen it in my lifetime where it didn't. Um, I mean, we've had some prolonged corrections, but even then, once it found the bottom, it came roaring back again. So um, I don't want to mislead anybody and tell them that it always comes back, but it always does, or it always has. Doesn't mean that one day it won't. So keep that in mind. But whenever you see these big corrections, they're usually great buying opportunities. And I tell you what, you can, rather than trying to day trade it, which you still can day trade and make your daily money. But the way I suggest doing that is when you get those big sell-offs, start nibbling away at some cheap options. Um, that's what I usually do. I'll jump in there and buy me some cheap options, and then only thing I can lose is my option money, and if it doesn't come back, but it always does, and it's always quick, easy money. And once I don't buy options and hold them long term. I just buy them long enough to make me a quick, nice little profit, double or triple your money, which you can on cheap options when you get this kind of move. Just buy you some cheap options and double or triple your money and let them go. Don't hang on to them. I mean, you could, don't get me wrong, but that's usually not my style. I'm not one to hang on to anything very long. I like to make my money and get out. And because anytime I've ever tried to hold on to something and watch it build, it always comes back and haunts me. So that's what led to this scalping run technique that I'm using now, is because it's amazing how just about every trade I could have a profit, and then many times it'd come back and wipe it out and then some, and I'm like, I'm just going to start taking my profit when I get some, just a little bit here and a little bit there. I'll nibble away at it. Next thing you know, my account's growing, and that's what led to this strategy. So it works. Um, so anyway, I think that's it for today. Almost 20 minutes again. A lot of trades in there. Just remember, when you see these, you'll hear me say this a lot, when you see these real strong trends like this, where there's very shallow corrections, lots of stems and little dojis mixed in, it doesn't look like it, but these are strong trends that just keep going higher and higher and higher. I can't believe we didn't get back up to the upper side of the trend channel. That was a clue that we were probably fixing to get a weak spot when we couldn't get back up here and started correcting, and lo and behold, it comes back to the trend line and it starts over again. And we basically closed on the very high tick of the day. I mean, notice that right there. We closed on the high tick of the day. And you don't get many days like that. So this is a great trading day. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Hope you had a great week. We'll be back again and do it Monday. I'm done for today. I'll see you next week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.